what do you actually make of that? What are gods to you? Actually, I asked this to John Vervaeke, and he gave a really Vervaekean answer. He said that they are transjective. That's the type
Yeah.
of stuff he would say.
Yeah. Gods are, I don't know. Firstly, I don't know. I, it could be said that what gods are gods are, are, yeah, that's correct. Checking the grammar there. But they are, like, if you have a value, what you should have is one overarching value so that all of your goals, your sub goals are united, akin to an organization that is working toward one
Yes.
aspect, or yeah,
Yes,
one
I
lane.
understand.
And gods are when it's not one. You're working on two or three or four different lanes. And it's my understanding of religion that across time you see a collapsing of multi gods to more and more single gods. Except
Hmm.
in the case of Christianity, that was the first time that it had broken that and said what is one is actually three. But then it didn't go from 3 to 10 to 20. It didn't
Yes,
go like that.
I understand.
Although in some ways you can think of Catholicism as adopting that a bit with the people, with
Hmm.
the statues that they pray to, but it's not exactly the same. So anyhow, the gods can be akin to fractionated values or contradictory values,
Hmm.
indicative of someone who's not united or individuated. But that just means it's all of us, that we all worship gods, because none
Yeah.
of us are these perfect individuated beings. Not even Jung, not even Carl Jung.
Okay. I actually doing research about this. My thesis is about a specific text, theological text from Egypt, where seemingly they speak of one God as the ultimate God, and all gods are manifestations of this God. And so it's not exactly monotheism, what they have there. Maybe they call it henotheism. I don't know if you're familiar with this term.
Henotheism is belief in one God without denying the others.
Yes, yes. So that they still exist. And it's interesting because it happens multiple times in Egyptian history and Egyptian texts, and they all seem completely contradictory. It's like this God is the one, and then that God is the upper God. And I'm just reading this through my Christian lens, I guess, or Western lens, being like, how can you reconcile these realities? And apparently it didn't matter because they didn't think about false or correct like we do. We have a false or
Uh-huh.
correct religion. If you're a religious
Yes.
person, your religion is correct. If it's one of the three Western ones. But for them, it wasn't like that. It was more about sacred or profane, I guess. But I don't want to drift off and talk
No,
about my thesis.
that's terribly interesting. Terribly interesting. I know. I Can you tell me more?
Can I tell you more? Well, what's really cool about this specific God that in this specific document is being called the one is that his name means hiddenness or something like that. And it's the idea,
Hiddenness.
yeah. So his name is Amun. Maybe you've heard it. And it comes from the verb iman, which means to hide or to conceal. And one of the reasons why they put him on top is because he doesn't have a name. Because when you have a name, you hold power over someone. And so I read this text. I read it for the first time. I basically went to my supervisor being like, I'm not sure what I want to do, but I have these interests. And I spoke about René Girard and I spoke about sacrifice and I spoke about religion. And he gave me this text. And I started reading and I was like, I kind of agree with it. you know, I started reading. I was like, this very much aligns with the way I think about it because I call myself a Christian, and perhaps because I don't feel my faith is exclusive, maybe I'm not allowed to wear that title. But to me, I understand the idea of other gods existing. To me, I see people in my daily life worshiping other gods. That's a
Hmm.
normal, everyday happening for me. So I don't reject their existence. And I know
But
Jonathan
do you
Pash,
reject their sacredness?
I reject putting them on top. I
So
reject,
do you,
yeah, go
so
ahead.
then would they be more profane, those gods or those people who worship the gods?
I guess if your highest God is not God in his totality, then you are going to be, I don't really like the word profane, but you're going to be less aligned, I guess.
Mm.
You see that in people a lot when their highest God is money or lust. I guess that results in a misalignment. That's, I guess, how I would view it. I don't think those, well, with lust, it's hard to argue for lust in many cases as a good thing. But if, for example, in Egypt, there's a very interesting example. You know Seth as a god.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is, as Peterson describes, he's chaos. And a lot of people instantly, Peterson even links him to the devil, which I think is pretty funny because he's like Set, and then he looks at the root and he thinks it's Satan. It's possible. But the Egyptians didn't see him as bad necessarily. You could also channel him, channel chaos. When you go to war, maybe you channel Seth. Maybe Seth is necessary to banish out other gods. When the Egyptians have like snakes on their heads, the snakes are kind of dangerous and bad, but also they protect. So it's something like that. But yeah, trying to remember this interview is about you, so I'm going to try to zoom out a bit, unless you have anything to add to that. But otherwise,
No, but I have many questions which I'll ask you about later, either off air or toward the end.
If you enjoyed this Toe clipping, then the full video is linked in the description. You should also sign up for Toe Mail, which is again in the description and the pinned comment. You'll receive immediate access to all exclusive updates from the Theories of Everything podcast. It also helps me communicate directly with the core Toe community. You'll also receive my top 10 toes. Think of it as the intellectual version of Quentin Tarantino's Obsession.